In the name of God, in the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. If y'all want, you can stand. If you want to sit, it's fine. Whatever you want to do, I'm very chill, so whatever is fine. Okay. 2023, the year of your expected departure from Claremont McKenna College. The college degree in your hand and the world in your sight. As you eat at the hub, at the Ath Tea and events, at the sporting events, at Collins Dining Hall, I want you to ask yourselves, what will I be known for? How will you shift the paradigm? I remember when I first came to college, I was nervous, perhaps suffering from imposter syndrome, leaving the nest for the first time, unsure of what was to come. But whatever comes, know that you are ready to take on every challenge that comes in front of you and that you belong here at CMC. We stand today in a world that has seen great turmoil. We live in fear of violence, unemployment, struggling with insecurities of not living up to our potential or the expectations of our family members and even strangers. Our hearts are troubled. We experience racism, hatred, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, homophobia, gender bias, Islamophobia, ageism, many types of discrimination. And we breathe that air of negativity, and we have no idea more often than not how to deal with it. But with your CMC, being at CMC, being a student here, being faculty and staff here, comes with a great amount of power and a great amount of privilege. And you can use that power to ignite a light to make things right starting tonight. And, you know, it's like having these infinity stones in your hand, right? And you've got it in your hand and you can destroy half of the world or you can restore half of the world by saying, I am CMC. Please join me in the prayer. God, we ask that you protect our first years, our sophomores, our juniors, and our seniors, that you empower them with the spiritual inertia that carries them through these 4 years and through the walls and gardens of this beautiful campus, that you bestow your guidance to divert them away from risk-taking behaviors that potentially affect their lives and futures. We ask that their souls and hearts are well and serve as beacons of support for one another. We ask that you endow them with your mercy and cure them of their anxieties, insecurities, and fears. To develop these first years today into a dream team of hope that lights the hearts so that they aren't just CMC faculty, students, and staff, but a CMC family. A family that will serve as the role models for an inclusive, accepting, and loving world for us all, to help us remember that today we have the opportunity to come together and to show the world what the future can truly and should surely look like, where one can learn to appreciate the beauty of other people's cultures, identities, backgrounds, and faiths, like flowers in a garden, all unique and precious, but the sum of the parts is so much greater than the individual worth. If we can truly change the way we see, touch, and interact with one another, then we can truly become the class of 2023 that the world must see. Welcome to CMC. Amin.
Thank you, Imam, for those inspiring and wise words, and good morning to you all. As we capture the excitement this morning for where we've been and where we are headed, I would like to pause for a moment to reflect on a recent sad loss for CMC and the world beyond. On August 25th, Tom Neff, CMC class of 1976 and member of our Board of Trustees, unexpectedly passed away. Tom and his wife Donna, who serves on the Scripps College Board, are parents of Elena, CMC class of 2021, and Maddie, Scripps class of 2021. Tom provided invaluable leadership on our board, informing and supporting our commitment to integrated sciences, public safety, Title IX, and many other initiatives. As CEO and founder of FibroGen, he dedicated his professional career to finding cures for some of the most deadly and mystifying diseases. As a major in both government and biology, and a star on our water polo team, Tom cultivated his broadly and deeply integrated intelligence and tireless work ethic at CMC. He pushed imagined limits, took on ostensibly impossible challenges, and succeeded. CMC shaped him, and his leadership and legacy will shape us for many decades to come. So please let us take a moment of silence to remember Tom and send our love and prayers to Tom's family from a community that meant so much to him as he does to us. Thank you. And welcome to our convocation for the 2019-2020 academic year. Before we begin and enter another powerful cycle of productive experience, responsive reflection, and higher, broader, deeper learning here at the college, we call ourselves together. Our deans honor special milestones and recognize those whose contributions have earned significant awards. We hear from Professor Gaston Espinoza on the cultivation of intellectual life and President Dina Rosin on student leadership. We sing our college song about civilization and how it prospers through commerce, the exchange of value, ideas, values. And we look back and forward, both for inspiration and for direction. Historians know that we often see the past in terms of the future we want to create. And we see the future in ways bound by how we remember the past. For physicists, the lines we draw to divide time are even more arbitrary. Einstein observed the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. So we're guided simultaneously by both our origins and our destinations. And the CMC strategy gives us the compass to navigate the journey ahead. We tack 3 ways to sail in a single direction. And before setting off, we look both out at the horizon and inward to the power of our vessel. Our vision for the liberal arts and responsible leadership, the commitment increasingly necessary to realize our founding vision, to strengthen and integrate the sciences and computation, and the expansion of student opportunity to meet the needs of an increasingly complex, competitive world. Each rooted in our past, each inspiring our future, each responsive to the challenges in the world around us, each amplifying the singular strengths of what we here do best. First, we look out at a world that beckons for responsible leadership that can bring us together when we are falling further apart. When the national discourse is plagued with ad hominem attacks, conclusory arguments, and intentional dishonesty, we all need responsible leadership based on integrity and principle, reason and evidence. Leadership that is open to free expression when it is most disagreeable, that engages in debate with respect, that commits to open inquiry to get at a deeper shared understanding and masters effective dialogue to resolve conflicts in creative ways. Leadership informed by foundational fluencies for a flourishing civilization, and the numeracies we need for more sophisticated empirical understanding, the core qualities of good character, and the highest human capabilities for discerning truth, solving problems, creating value, inculcating values. There is no incompatibility, our founders reasoned, between an education for specific types of leadership and an education to develop a liberally informed mind. In fact, they wrote, real leadership presupposes the latter, and in turn, a liberally informed mind can find no more satisfying vocation than in such leadership. Our founders would be proud today of the many ways in which we are animating the original idea of the college, a rationally balanced education to meet the political, economic, social, and cultural needs of this generation to prepare for tomorrow's world of affairs. Our powerful liberal arts curriculum and its commitment to open multidisciplinary inquiry in the search for truth. The problem-solving research opportunities from our institutes, centers, and labs. The exposure to diverse viewpoints in the Athenaeum nearly every weeknight of the academic year. The teamwork learned from our student enterprises, organizations, and accomplished athletic program. The skills in debate, diplomacy, and dialogue our students learn from our forensics team, Model UN, the Care Center, and Open Academy programs, each and all together put our original idea to the test of our national and global educational imperatives. The greater needs for responsible leadership in our communities, in our democracy, in our economy, in the world beyond. So our first priority is to celebrate, reinforce, practice, and continue to perfect this founding mission. Second, we look out at a world that is shaped at an accelerated pace by science, computation, and the application of new technology. The exponential growth of technology is outpacing the technical, ethical, economic, and policy intelligence of our civilization. From the first decade of the college, President Benson envisioned, but never succeeded in developing, a central and independent role for science education at CMC. The natural and physical sciences, mathematics, and related fields have always been incorporated within our core liberal arts program. However, like much of the rest of the country, we have not kept pace with the demands of our time for a sufficiently funded, multidisciplinary, computational, liberal arts, research-focused education in integrated science and computation. We seek not only to catch up to our greatest challenge, but here to seize the opportunity to leap ahead, to build a highly collaborative program that has not been developed before, one that will strengthen all of our departments, one that will shape the further development of our campus. As the faculty envisioned last year, this means one department that can take advantage of scientific inquiry across disciplines, a focus on computation within science and in adjacency to it and other disciplines, strong bridges to and from the social sciences and humanities, the vital role of research at basic and advanced levels of scientific inquiry. In sum, we seek to create the next generation liberal arts program in integrated sciences and computation in ways that can educate our emerging scholar leaders to reach a better understanding of the complex world we live in, shape responsive solutions, design new financial models, develop stronger policy, ensure ethical decision-making, and persuade through compelling rhetoric and storytelling. So our second priority this year is to fine-tune and develop sufficient resources to realize this exciting vision. Third, we look out and see a world with significant financial barriers to the full opportunity for our people to thrive and succeed and contribute to those around them. Nationally, we are struggling to address large gaps in educational attainment, mounting student debt, and poor performance within our most selective institutions on measures of social mobility. We have yet to realize what Martin Luther King Jr. called the promissory note on our constitutional commitment to equal opportunity. In 1946, our college was founded with a commitment to give our students the financial support and the intellectual and social tools they needed to pursue their dreams. According to Kevin Starr, our first students, nearly all veterans returning from war in 1946, were not waiting in line to start a college, although the college could not be founded without them. They were waiting in line to redeem dreams nurtured in the Quonset huts in the South Pacific, dreams of getting an education, of becoming someone, something, somebody. The GI Bill provided financial support for a generation of veterans, and CMC's Young Ambitious program provided them an opportunity to grapple with the big questions of our civilization, build a future for themselves, their family, and their country, and prepare themselves, yes, to be someone, something, somebody. And that's precisely what we're doing today, through the Student Imperative, the Kravis Opportunity Fund, the Saul Center for Student Opportunity, our entire academic residential program to expand student opportunity for every emerging scholar leader in our CMC community. Thus, our third priority this year is to build on that legacy and our recent achievements, to help our students remove the barriers in their way to strive and thrive, and to expand opportunity to become someone, something, somebody. So this morning, we look out at the world and ask what it needs from us. We look to our founding vision and mission for the answers. We look within to see the strength and self-confidence to encourage our ambition. We look to each other to forge our future path, to perfect the liberal arts education that is rationally balanced, to prepare our students for their future world of affairs, and cultivate the responsible leadership we all need from this generation. Prepare our students to understand and shape the future applications of technology in our world by strengthening and fully integrating the sciences, computation, the social sciences, and the humanities, and expand opportunity for all to take on the challenges and seize the opportunities of our time. So for this moment, joining here in these three core commitments in common purpose, many thanks to each of you. Very best in your vital pursuits, and congratulations to you all on the launch of another successful academic year. Thank you very much.
Morning. It is now my pleasure to present to you this year's honorees. There are two categories I will present, one for years of service and one for exceptional staff or service awards. So honorees, you're sitting there, do not come to the stage, stay where you are, but please do stand as recognized. Attendees, there's much information about these great individuals in your booklet, including their hobbies and interests, and I highly encourage you to read it to get to know them better. So let us start. 25 years of service, that is Ken Scalmanini, the Assistant Professor of Physical Education and head of the men's basketball team. We continue with 30 years of service. Now, those individuals who have reached 30 years of service will have their names inscribed on plaques on the fountain in Butler Plaza in front of Bauer Center, where you can all go sunbathing at the appropriate and inappropriate times. And so the names you see there are all people who have served the college for 30 years or more. This year there are 4 of them, and maybe you can hold your applause for all 4 of them simultaneously at the end. Let us start with Mark Costanzo, Professor of Psychology. Oh, yeah, I know, it's so hard, huh? And he deserves it, I know, but still. Dorothy Smith Davis, Administrative Assistant in Advancement. Richard Burdekin, Jonathan B. Lovelace, Professor of Economics. And finally, Midge Brown, Assistant Director of Media Technology Services. Now. Thank you all. That was 120 years of amazing contributions there. Now we move on to 35 years of service, where we have 2 persons. First of all, John Goldhammer, Professor of Physical Education, Associate Director of Athletics, and Head Coach of the men's and women's track teams. It's coming, it's coming. Then we have Margie Charlop, Professor of Psychology and Director of the Autism Center. Now. We move on to 40 years of service, where we have again 120 years represented here. The first person is Jody Burton, Professor of Physical Education, Associate Director of Athletics, and the Women's Golf Head Coach. The second one is Michael Sutton, currently Director of Advancement for Athletics, but known to many of us as the Athletic Director for many years, and also an alumnus of the college. And thirdly, we have Sylvia Gonzalez, Building Attendants. Congratulations and thank you. And then finally, 45 years of service to this college is Tony Fukuloro, the George C.S. Benson Professor of Public Affairs and Professor of Chemistry, and also a predecessor of mine in the previous century. Congratulations. I thank all of you for your amazing contributions to this college. It would not be the place it is without all of you. Thank you. There are also 4 more staff recognition awards that I want to mention here. They have been celebrated already at the end of the last academic year, but it is absolutely worthwhile celebrating them once again. These are people who were all nominated by faculty, staff, and students. Many students nominate, and by the way, students, I recommend that you do so too. When you know great people here in this community of ours, do nominate them. We actually listen very carefully to that in the selection committee. They are people who have demonstrated stellar leadership, commitment to colleagues, students, and the college, and overall excellence. And the 2019 recipients are Vince Greer, Associate Dean of Students for Diversity Inclusion and Associate Dean of Residential Life, and Director of the Care Center. Is Vince here? There he is. Beth Yeager, Associate Director of Institutional Philanthropy. Is Beth here? There she is. Yes. Charlene Kyle, Employee Relations Coordinator. Is Charlene here? No, she still deserves a small applause. And finally, Aidan Peterson, Assistant Director of Academic Administration. Are they here? There they are. Thanks to all 4 of you for your amazing work as well.
Hello. My name is Shana Levin, a psychology professor and one of the associate deans of the faculty. Also very short. It is my pleasure to recognize the winners of last year's faculty awards. Award winners, if you're here, please stand when I recognize your award. I promise to be brief. Last year's winner of the Crocker Award was Boswell Professor of Economics, Heather Antical. This prize is awarded to the professors selected by fellow faculty members as having made the greatest service contributions to the college that year. Last year, faculty members across the college singled her out for her service as chair of the administration committee, on which she worked collaboratively with others across the college to create a detailed vision for the potential new CMC Science Department. As the dean of the faculty said when she won the award last spring, she was the right person at the right time, displaying a beautiful combination of total intellectual openness to all arguments and flexibility with regard to the following new paths with a decisive and efficient focus on the task at hand, keeping us all moving forward. Congratulations, Professor Antical in absentia. Oh! Stand when I recognize you. Professor Antical! Oh, I didn't see you. I'm sorry. Last year's G. David Huntoon Senior Teaching Award went to Fritz B. Burns, Professor of Financial Economics, Lisa Muehlbrook. This prize is awarded annually to a full professor selected by a committee who reviews nominations from juniors and seniors. Professor Muehlbrook teaches such courses as advanced corporate finance, corporate financial management, and research methods in financial economics. She is known by all to be a demanding teacher who at the same time helps her students succeed, and they rave about how much they learn in her courses. One student said, "I wish I could take 10 classes taught by Professor Muehlbrook. Awesome, awesome, awesome." Congratulations, Professor Muehlbrook. Last year, the winner of the Glenn R. Huntoon Award for Superior Teaching was an assistant professor of economics who only joined CMC in 2017, Professor Julio Garin. This award is given annually to the faculty member chosen from among a list of nominees submitted by the entire student body as Outstanding Teacher of the Year. Professor Garin's specialties include macroeconomics and data science. A student commented that, "He's by far the best professor I've had during my time at CMC. The class was extremely challenging, but he found a way to make difficult mathematical and economic concepts extremely engaging." Congratulations, Professor Garin. Last year's Faculty Scholarship Award went to Professor of Psychology, Margie Charlip. This prize is awarded annually by a faculty committee to recognize outstanding research, scholarship, or creative work at CMC. Professor Charlip is the director of the Claremont Autism Center. For 35 years, she has created a powerful impact on the lives of children with autism and their families. Focusing on children with autism's strengths and not weaknesses, she is known as the creator of video modeling, a technique used by hundreds of researchers and practitioners. Through curricular and research opportunities at the Autism Center, she has given literally hundreds of students unique opportunities for therapeutic work and research. Congratulations, Professor Charlotte. The winner of last year's Presidential Award for Merit was Fletcher Jones Professor of Mathematics and Statistics and George R. Roberts Fellow, Mark Huber. This prize is awarded by the president in recognition of significant service to the college. Last year alone, Professor Huber was chair of the Department of Mathematical Sciences, director of the Computer Science and Data Science Sequences, member of the CMC Computer Science Data Science Committee and 5C Computer Science Special Task Force, and advisory board member of the Murty Sunak Quantitative and Computing Lab. That was all one sentence. Professor Huber is an exceptional contributor to campus life and finally on a well-deserved fall sabbatical. Congratulations to Professor Huber. The winner of the Dean's Distinguished Service Award last year was Dawn and Lorraine Freeberg, Professor of Economics and Finance, Eric Hewson. This prize is awarded by the Dean of Faculty in recognition of significant service to the college. During his tenure as chair of the Robert Day School of Economics and Finance, he oversaw 8 faculty searches and 11 faculty reappointment and promotion reviews. He conducted a thorough curricular revision and not 1, but 3 external reviews of departmental programs. In the words of the Dean of the Faculty, he led his department through an amazing number of transformations and steps forward in an unfailingly kind, helpful, intelligent manner. He never failed to serve his colleagues to the best of his ability, and for that he received the Dean's Distinguished Service Award. Congratulations again to all of our faculty award winners.
Good morning, I'm Emily Wiley, the other Associate Dean, and I get to introduce the new tenure track faculty to you. New faculty, when you hear your name, please stand and remain standing, and we will try to save all of our applause to the end. Sarah Cannon joins us as an Assistant Professor of Mathematics. Also joining mathematics is Mike Isbicki, Assistant Professor of Computer Science. Jennifer Feitosa joins us as an Assistant Professor of Psychology. And Florian Madison joins the Robert Day School as an Assistant Professor of Economics. Also joining the Robert Day School is Jessamine Schaller as an Assistant Professor of Economics. And Sarah Marzin joins the Keck Science Department as an Assistant Professor of Physics. Also joining Keck Science is Janet Shung, Assistant Professor of Physics. And Brianna Toole joins us as an Assistant Professor of Philosophy. Also, Erica Perkins Jasper is the new Director of Athletics. New faculty, we welcome you.
Here I am again. Not for long, don't worry. It is now my great pleasure to introduce today's keynote speaker, the Arthur V. Stoughton Professor of Religious Studies, Gaston Espinoza. Professor Espinoza is a graduate of Princeton Seminary, Harvard University, and the University of California at Santa Barbara, where he obtained his PhD. Gaston Espinoza is a scholar of American religion and politics, Latino religions, Pentecostal, charismatic, and liberation movements, religion and the American presidency, and more broadly, religion in the United States. More recently, he has done fascinating work on Latino Muslims in the United States. Professor Espinoza has held visiting, academic, and fellowship appointments at Dartmouth College, Northwestern University, UC Santa Barbara, Princeton University, and Yale University. He has lectured on American and US Latino religion, politics, and activism at, amongst others, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Dartmouth, Penn, Chicago, Northwestern, Notre Dame, UCLA, USC, various universities in Europe, for example, at Sciences Po, at Université de Paris, and in other countries, Sweden, Ukraine, and so on. It would take a long time to list them all. He has won a number of fellowships and awards, including an NEH fellowship at the National Humanities Center Institute for Advanced Studies, the Yale Program in Religion and American History Fellowship, the Princeton Charlotte W. Newcombe Fellowship, the Dartmouth College Cesar Chavez Fellowship, the Northwestern University Andrew Mellon Fellowship, the UC Santa Barbara Outstanding Teaching Award, and the Hugging Squirrels Award from the Organization of American Historians. Please join me in welcoming Gaston Espinoza as our keynote speaker.
Thank you, President Chodosh, Dean Uvin, and the Board of Trustees for inviting me to give this year's Convocation charge and to share with all of you some reflections on why it's worthwhile and necessary in our world today to cultivate our intellectual lives. Our growing tribalism and tolerance for others is creating a hunger for leaders who, because they cultivate the intellectual life, can suggest real community-oriented solutions to the problems that vex us. This morning, I invite you to think of yourselves as becoming such leaders. to explore with me the relationship between the liberal arts, social change, and then to reflect with me on 3 questions. First, how do we cultivate the intellectual life? How do we do it here at CMC? Second, where do we see examples of people who did so and brought about positive social change? We hear about the negative social change all the time in the news, but not always the positive. And third, what practical social benefits can cultivating the intellectual life produce? Joining us as we reflect on these 3 questions are 2 people you perhaps know quite well, Martin Luther King Jr. and our own CMC alum, Chris Temple. You might remember that at the height of the civil rights struggle, Martin Luther King was confronted with the grim reality that the lofty hopes he had proclaimed in his I Have a Dream speech might be smashed on the anvil of history and intolerance. The immediate problem he faced was translating the pain and suffering of the African American community, which was less than 10% of the population, to the rest of the nation in a way that would persuade their hearts, minds, and souls to change public policy. You'll recall that King had been a liberal arts and then a religious studies student, that he used his training to bring about positive social change is one of the reasons why I argue he was such an effective leader. How did King and Chris Temple cultivate the intellectual life? What does that even mean? An intellectual is someone who draws on rational principles to engage in adaptive problem solving, and that's the key phrase, adaptive problem solving. That's the core definition of intelligence. Let me say that again. An intellectual is someone who draws on rational principles to engage in adaptive problem solving. How does one cultivate such principles and cultivate engaging in such problem solving? 5 strategies stand out. Number 1, cultivation is something that we do, not simply something that we think. Cultivation requires and even means action. You cannot cultivate this plant by accident. I have to water it every day. I have to nurture it, change the soil. I have to tend to it. And so too we have to tend to our minds, to our intellectual development, just like we do our body. We're very good at grooming our hair, taking a bath, showering up, freshening up so we look good externally. But what about the mind? What kind of attention do you give your mind? You can think about your mind as something worthy of your attention. Third, it requires breaking up the hard, superficial topsoil of life in order to reach the deeper, richer soil beneath that nourishes life. Cultivation requires breaking up the topsoil. What is the topsoil? All the stereotypes, the biases, the things that we hear that are hard on one side or the other. No way to break beneath it. We can't talk about things in a civil way because the ground is so hard. People are so hardened and committed to their positions. Fourth, it requires care. Cultivation requires care, mind care. It requires labor. It's work. I've got a little garden at home on my balcony. I've got about 20 plants. I got to water them every morning, change the soil. It's a lot of work. We have to do the same with our minds. We have to study, to discipline our mind, to think hard about issues that are deep, that aren't easy, that go beyond the local magazine or newspaper. We have to challenge ourselves. And it also requires encouragement. Cultivation requires that we encourage each other. We need each other to engage in that cultivation. Cultivation implies community as well. And fifth, cultivation of the intellect requires a communal or societal context. You cannot cultivate alone. All cultivation takes place in a social and communal context. Your friends, your peers, your professors, your school becomes your context in which you can nourish and nurture your intellectual life. Your families, for those who are faculty and staff, And all of these things we can nurture our minds and be quite intentional about it. Cultivating the intellectual life is important because it enables us to recognize and go beyond superficial understandings, stereotypes, and biases in life. Cultivating the intellectual life is valuable because, thanks to that cultivation, we can then draw on our store of ideas, sources, and disciplines that we'll be exposed to here at CMC to engage critically in adaptive problem solving in the problems that we face in everyday life. In other words, all of the classes you take provide the opportunity to gain tools to help you break through the topsoil in so many disciplines and so many avenues of life. So don't just look at those classes as a requirement, but as an opportunity. Methods for cultivating the intellectual life. With these definitions of cultivating the intellectual life in hand, like Martin Luther King and Chris Temple, what practical steps can we take to cultivate this life here at CMC and after? First, commit to cultivating your intellectual life. Make a commitment today. The first day of class, I want to cultivate my mind. I want to treat my mind with respect. I want it to be a mind that functions well at maximum capacity. Treat it as a real entity and not an abstract. Start this commitment today by putting and pouring yourself into all of your current courses, not just those in your major. Take courses that will challenge you and will broaden you, not just those you'll ace. The general education requirements in a liberal arts college program are a wonderful opportunity to widen your intellectual horizon and equip you with the intellectual resources and tools, really they're tools, you'll need to engage in adaptive problem solving now and in the future. Embrace adaptive problem solving, secondly, as a way of life. Be the person who has the courage to come forward and to propose bold solutions to the problems we face in everyday life. Do this not only in your classes, but in your job, in your family, in your interactions. Don't just be passive, going with the flow. Step in to the flow and be part of it. Be part of the movement. Third, be mindful and fully present in reading, in your classes, and in all of your conversations. What does it mean to be mindful when you're talking to somebody? What does it mean to be fully present when you're talking to somebody? You ever talk to somebody looking over your shoulder, not really paying attention to you, everything else that's going on around them? Are they fully present for you at that moment? Or is their mind somewhere else? What happens when we do that? We miss the opportunities and the exchanges. We miss the insights of that conversation we could have had if we had been fully present. But instead, we're thinking about what's next for us. Not what can I learn from them? How might I benefit from this? And what might I give to that relationship as well? Rather than just going through the motions of doing the assigned reading and listening passively in class, devour the readings. Mark up your books. Argue with the author in the margins. I love to do that. Ask questions in your reading, and then bring these questions to class. Don't just read passively. Mark it up. Scribble on it. No, don't scribble. I mean, scribble intentionally, okay? Something intelligent. I don't agree with you, and this is why. And give your reasons why you don't agree. Ask questions in your reading. Look at your reading as the opportunity to engage some of the most greatest minds in human history. You're going to read some really amazing people. Don't just look at it as an assignment. It won't mean anything to you. You won't be able to speak about it intelligently in class because you didn't engage it. Your mind wasn't fully present in the material. Stop for a moment. What they're saying. Take their ideas seriously. Fourth, keep a journal, or what I like to call an ideas book, by your bed. Write down all the great ideas and insights you learned from class and elsewhere, along with your hopes and dreams and your crazy, creative, and innovative concepts and notions. Leonardo da Vinci's sketch and notebook aren't a bad example for us. Not every idea in his or ours is going to be a good one, and most will never come to pass. But if you're patient, some will blossom in ways beyond your wildest imagination. And some of you know that because it's already happened. Some of you already have that book by your bed, in your office, on your desk. I want to encourage you to go out and buy a book and jot down your notes and insights from all of your classes, not just one, in all walks of life, in all activities. Carry your journal and book of ideas with you wherever you go. Write down not only the brilliant idea of your professors and classmates, but also, and more importantly, your own interpretations and adaptations of these ideas. Fifth, take philosopher and psychologist William James's advice and let your creative and entrepreneurial ideas possess you until you work them off by acting on them. Rather than ask only, what do I think about this situation? Geniuses instinctively also always ask, what must I do? Sixth, cultivate your inner garden by building margins into your life. Order your private inner world and make time and space for quiet reflection. I know some of you are not comfortable with yourselves. Sometimes I'm not either, and we're not as faculty. We're busy. We don't always stop to do that, to take our own inventory, so to speak. But we all have an inner world, or a garden, if you will, that if left uncultivated, will become overwhelmed by the cares of the external world. This may explain why a person who externally looks perfectly healthy can collapse under seemingly modest pressure. Find ways to nurture your inner world, your mind, your spirit, your soul, your ego, whatever you want to call it. Not only with sleep and physical rest, but also with careful reflection and wonder about your life, your learning. Find ways to nurture that inner world. You will notice the needles of the grass pushing up through the sidewalk, that your friend needs your attention if you've left the margins in your life. But you won't see any of that. Seventh, and finally, on this portion, reflect on how you might use this knowledge you've gained here at CMC and elsewhere through the cultivation of your intellectual life to bring about positive social change. We read in the newspaper every day about the negative. What can we do to bring positive change? Write down your ideas for how to use your knowledge. The intellectual life is incomplete if we divorce it from the world of ideas and the world of action. They come together naturally. Be intentional about making and taking the tools you receive at CMC and go out and make your impact in the world. People who have cultivated the intellectual life. Who are examples of people who engage in this kind of cultivation? My first example is our own CMC graduate, Chris Temple. I first met Chris a number of years ago in my class, Mystics, Prophets, and Social Change, and in a second class on Religion, Politics, and Global Violence, kind of the hit parade of the positive and dark side of social change. Chris fully engaged the reading and always linked our classes and conversations with his other liberal arts classes in economics and politics and so many other disciplines. He stood out to me as someone who was genuinely concerned about taking what he was learning in class and applying it to solve real-world problems. He had spent a year in Bangladesh working with people in poverty before he came to CMC. After taking a wide range of courses at the liberal arts at CMC in microfinancing, economics, politics, and religious studies, he, along with his colleagues, decided to create a documentary on what it would be like to live on just $1 a day. Something that 1.1 billion people do every day of their lives. Chris and his colleagues spent 8 weeks in rural Guatemala and had a small taste of what it was like to live in poverty. In order to reach a larger audience, he decided to take this beyond his personal realm by creating a documentary that followed him and his colleagues throughout their struggle and their daily existence. Chris and his colleagues courageously chose to live alongside the poor in order to identify with them and to understand them more closely and their suffering. In doing so, they were like what I'm going to tell you about Martin Luther King's good neighbor, because they deliberately engaged in universal, sometimes dangerous, and oftentimes excessive altruism. They faced many of the challenges of the global poor, including hunger, parasites, and extreme financial stress. They used their own time and money to care for people outside their religion, their tribe, and their nation. Chris's impact, along with that of his colleagues, has been remarkable. Their documentary has been viewed by over 650,000 people on YouTube around the world. 650,000 people. And he was just like you, sitting in an ordinary class here at CMC. No different. They've taken their film on a national tour to 25 major universities, receiving coverage on CBS's This Morning with Charlie Rose. They've raised over $800,000 for education and microfinance programs. Their film won the Audience Award for Best Documentary at the Sonoma International Film Festival. Due to their impact, Real Leaders magazine recognized Chris Temple and his fellow CMC graduate, Zach Ingracia, alongside of Angelina Jolie and Bill Gates, you know those names, right? As two of the top 100 visionary leaders of 2015. They've continued their passion for social change with a new documentary titled Salam Neighbor, a compelling look at the Syrian refugee crisis. U.S. Ambassador to the UN Samantha Powers said of this documentary, "This film is important because it shatters the idea that there isn't anything one can do, that the problem is too big." Many of their ideas were cultivated right here at CMC, and they have given birth to life, to consciousness raising, that has in turn inspired countless others to do the same around the world. I saw another documentary in Argentina, kind of following a similar pattern. Chris and Zach exemplify what it means to cultivate the intellectual life and use it to bring about positive social change. The second and final example of a person who drew upon his cultivation of the intellectual life is Martin Luther King Jr. King attended the liberal arts-oriented Morehouse College, where he earned a major in sociology and studied religion. And afterwards, he pursued his MDiv from Crozier Seminary and a PhD in religious studies from Boston University. His insatiable curiosity and love for the liberal arts continued while in Boston, where he took classes at Harvard while a doctoral student on Plato, Reinhold Niebuhr, Alfred North Whitehead, and Hegel, and where he also studied Gandhi's philosophy and methods of nonviolent resistance. King also helped organize and lead the Dialectical Society. Students met monthly to discuss philosophical and theological ideas and their application to the Black experience in America, and to solve the problems of the world, politically, socially, in the theological realm. Pretty amazing. King drew on his liberal arts and training and knowledge of religion, philosophy, social ethics, economics, sociology, history, and politics to fire up his religious imagination and to bring about social change. It was precisely his religious imagination, resourced by the liberal arts, the very same classes you'll be taking, that gave him the toolkit he needed to make the civil rights movement not only possible, but successful on a national scale. In his religious imagination, he believed that a God of justice taught that all people and all races and all classes were equal. Yet after failed attempts to bring about civil rights and end to segregation, King became more pessimistic. He had to dig deeper. So began a series of lectures on the New Testament, in a sermon in particular called the Parable of the Good Samaritan. And in this parable, which talks about a Jewish traveler that had been beaten on the road from Jerusalem to Jericho, he talks about how a Samaritan, somebody outside of the Jewish community, took the time to bandage this man's wounds. King next did something brilliant, imaginative, and generous. He cast the white community not as the robbers in the story of the Good Samaritan and the man who had been beaten and left for dead, but as the Good Samaritan, and in so doing, appealed to their higher virtues. Further, drawing on his liberal arts training, he argued that the Good Samaritan exemplified 3 types of altruism that all people should admire and aspire to practice: universal altruism, dangerous altruism, and excessive altruism. Altruism, he said, is defined as regard for, devotion to, in the interest of others. The Samaritan was good precisely because he made the concern and interest of others first in his life, despite the fact he had no social obligation to help. King argued that the Good Samaritan engaged in universal altruism because he looked beyond the external accidents of that wounded man's race, religion, and nationality, which were different from his own, and saw him as a human being first and only Jewish secondarily. King then contrasts this with the hypocrisy of the supposed universalism of the Declaration of Independence, which insisted that all men, except black men and women, were created equal. King argues that, quote, if a white man is concerned only about his race, he will casually pass by the Negro who has been robbed of his personhood, stripped of his sense of dignity, and left dying by the wayside, unquote. The Good Samaritan refused to leave a broken man on the wayside. And at considerable expense, personal expense, he raised him up. Good Samaritan's altruism was dangerous because he's risked his life to save another, and one to which he had no external obligations. King reminds us we have to overcome our fears and stereotypes. Why didn't the first 2 people help him? Maybe they were afraid of being mugged. Maybe they were afraid that the man that seemed like he was beat up was really playing a trick on him so they could rob them. You have to overcome your fears to engage in that help, to engage in that altruistic behavior. Third, King argues that the Good Samaritan possessed excessive altruism because rather than call an ambulance, call a doctor, or leave some money for the man on the wayside, he interrupted his own day and schedule by personally kneeling down and with his own hands binding the wounds of the man, and then personally putting him on his donkey or putting him in his car and took him to the inn and said, I'll pay the bill, however long it takes. The Samaritan went way beyond his duty and social obligation. Pity devoid of genuine sympathy leads to paternalism and condescension. In the final analysis, King wrote, I must not ignore the wounded man on life's Jericho road because he is a part of me and I am a part of him. His agony diminishes me and his salvation enlarges me. Now that's a liberal arts education to take to heart. Concluding lessons. So what lessons can we learn? First, we've seen that like Chris Temple, our intellectual training can make us more tolerant and understanding with people who live in different cultures. Second, we've seen through Martin Luther King and the Good Samaritan that cultivating an intellectual life can help us avoid tribalism, bias, and the weaponization of political and social views and the radical polarization we see in contemporary society by not allowing us, or I should say by allowing us, to find a middle ground and solutions for the common good. Third and finally, cultivating the intellectual life can empower us to engage in problem-solving solutions in everyday life that you and I face, whether like Chris, like Martin Luther King, or a business entrepreneur. And what about you? How will you cultivate the intellectual life while you're here at CMC? How will you choose to expand your intellect and heart in and outside the classroom? What kind of person will you become? For yourself or for others? How will your time here at CMC benefit the world we live in?
Okay, wow. Thank you, Professor Espinoza. I'm going to sing the alma mater now. It's a fun little song. You can follow along with the words in your program if you want, or not, then you won't notice if I mess up. All right. Join along if you know it. We're the sons and the daughters of Claremont, McKenna, and proud of our famed alma mater, with friends of our youth, seeking wisdom, seeking truth. We will lead on from Claremont, McKenna. We have crescit cum commercio civitas as our motto at Claremont, McKenna. We always will be part of dear old CMC, ever loyal to Claremont, McKenna.
Zach, I always have that. Oh, can you hear me? Good. I always have that song stuck in my head for a long time after Convocation. The New York Times recently published a set of articles and poems that seek to retell the history that many of us didn't learn growing up. The 1619 Project dates the founding of American democracy, or lack thereof, not to 1776, but to when the first ship of enslaved Africans arrived in Virginia, then a British colony. Now, 400 years later, the 1619 Project is shedding light on the brutality of enslavement and the centuries of racial apartheid that followed, and how everything we know about modern American politics and economics can be traced to this. Students, as we welcome in a new school year, I hope we approach the education we are so fortunate to receive here with a new level of curiosity. We must question not simply facts and figures, but rather the frameworks by which we interpret this knowledge. The 1619 Project seeks to change what many people have presupposed about the history of this country and re-examine what they once believed to be true. We must be willing to question our basic assumptions and foundations of our knowledge, even when it is uncomfortable or difficult. At CMC, we have committed ourselves to the ideals of honest discourse and thoughtful expression that allow us to explore important questions of our time, both inside and outside of the classroom. We are so privileged to be able to learn from brilliant professors who are so dedicated to guiding us and teaching us as we pursue and grow our intellectual curiosities. To live in close community with our classmates allows us to expand our education to become a constant and lifelong pursuit of learning. We have resources here, such as the Athenaeum, that led us to not only learn from, but engage with activists and thought leaders. We have a unique and privileged opportunity to learn new ways to think critically and reason deeply about the systems that shape our collective reality. The 1619 Project forces us to realize that many systems and practices that we now look back on with horror and disgust were once seen as normal and commonplace by many. What aspects of our society now will be looked back on with shame 400 years from now? What parts of daily life have become so normalized that we may be epistemically limited from recognizing their injustice? How can we use our education to illuminate these injustices now? A liberal arts education allows us to seek and understand truths through a multitude of perspectives. Through history and economics, philosophy and mathematics, religious studies and literature, just to name a few. But please, let's not mention senior thesis. A liberal arts education forces us to learn beyond the field we might want to uniquely pursue, allowing us greater perspective in approaching the challenging problems of our time. Our general education requirements at CMC are a reflection of what we see as valuable and indispensable in an education. Part of questioning the foundations of our knowledge is questioning our required curriculum. For example, as most other colleges and universities have implemented, we ought to consider adding a requirement that forces us to analyze differences and consider how structural inequity has shaped our world. We are lucky to be in an environment and part of a community that pushes us to grapple with these difficult questions and constantly engage with each other's diverse perspectives. We must take advantage of this unique opportunity and develop values and principles that will stay with us much longer than we stay here. As we enter this new school year, we should keep in mind the lessons of the 1619 Project, though we must be radically curious, even when it is challenging. On our academic path, we must be brave enough to think differently and to speak up, especially when it is unpopular. We must imagine a world that looks fundamentally different than the one we are living in, even when it is difficult to see. The world is depending on us doing so. Thank you.